New beginnings cannot emerge where you refuse to allow endings. This is the primary principle, the initial instrument, the primal ignition. I have seen many ask earnestly for change while clinging to fragments of who they used to be. Thus, I ask plainly, what element of your history are you preserving, even though God has already called it finished? The weight you carry, the inertia, the airless recurrence of familiar patterns does not indicate deficiency or defeat. It does not reveal a shortage of discipline, resolve, or trust. The cause is your fixation on a former self. You have dressed yourself in delay, been shrouded in shame, and donned the attire of one who formerly assumed love must be earned, approval must be pursued, and scarcity must be obeyed. Those garments have become shrouds. You are not imprisoned. You have merely aligned yourself with a title that was never genuinely yours. I speak under spiritual authority with the fire of holy memory and the keen clarity of metaphysical reality. In reverent love, I declare this counterfeit identity must be buried. You are called to pronounce the unreal self deceased and yield it to truth so fully that deception cannot revive. Cease attempting to mend what was never designed to endure. Cease rehearsing the language of defeat. Cease transporting yesterday's wounds into the consecrated chamber of your new birth. The altar is prepared, the grave is open, and the Spirit of God waits with a single inquiry. Will you consent to the death of your former self? Do not profess a pursuit of abundance while your speech grows from fear. Do not ask for love while your inner life reverberates with rejection. Do not petition for peace while you wage conflict within. Which inner fragment requires burial for abundance to flourish? What must be interred so love can ascend? What must you surrender so that authentic peace may be born? This is not incremental betterment, it is the metamorphosis of the soul. It is not simple motivation, it is resurrection made present. My aim is not to pacify the ego, but to rouse the spirit. You were never created to normalize scarcity, to endure affliction as identity, or to be measured by defeat. You were fashioned for marked by and invited into divine radiance, and whatever contradicts the divine, I am must be let go. Not in stages, not someday, but immediately. Announce it with me. I release the counterfeit, I entomb the former, and I ascend in the strength of my renewal. This is the beginning, the pronouncement that divides and brandishes the instrument of change. While you define yourself by history patterns or persona, you remain tethered to them. Yet when you voice reality from the higher self, from the hidden sanctum, from the fire of divine truth, even death concedes. You are not becoming a different person. You are returning to awareness of the one you were prior to the world's labels. That holy, genuine, God-appointed self is not asleep, it is rising. Dual identities cannot co-govern a single life. As illumination and shadow cannot co-rule one room, the counterfeit self and the divine self cannot both preside over consciousness. Either the ego dominates with fearful bonds, or Christ reigns with truthful authority, but one will be lifted up while the other is dethroned. I have seen many attempt a divided loyalty, publicly declaring truth, while privately yielding to fear, pride, and the impulse to control. This is the ego speech, the smaller self assembled from injuries, recollections, and the illusion of separation. It is the internal murmur that warns, guard yourself when love comes, and mocks with who do you think you are. Then, as possibility arrives, it insists, be practical. As the Spirit unveils the miraculous, I instruct you in the law of substitution, not as theory, but as lived transfiguration. One voice must be quieted and the other magnified. You must choose which identity will articulate your life. Will your speech spring from rejection or from redemption? Will you confirm the world's narratives or God's truth? You cannot say both I am unworthy and I am divine without splitting your power and fracturing your inner life. The ego does not depart by coercion. It diminishes through quiet yields to the divine utterance and is reformed by holy cadence. Whenever you say, I am poor, you crown the ego. But when you declare, I am abundance made visible, you stir the presence of Christ within. When you confess, I am broken, the former self grieves. But when you affirm, I am whole through God's word, even the grave shudders. You do not wrestle with the former self-debate with illusion or grapple with darkness. You introduce light and magnify truth until deception loses breath. Speak with the conviction that heaven already dwells inside you because it truly does. Announce your truth as if God animates every breath because He does. Exchange each fear-laden sentence for one anchored in trust. Supersede the obsolete inner narration with a fresh decree. This is the reason I teach affirmations and urge continual rehearsal, not as hollow chanting, but to enthrone spiritual jurisdiction. Repetition forges cadence, and sacred cadence reshapes the soul's configuration. The law of substitution is the discipline of consecrated speech. Its genesis is a single sincere statement declared again and again until it becomes visible in lived reality. I am not the old, I am the risen. Speak this continually, daily, consistently, not as mere repetition, but as a sovereign command. The tone you choose is the identity you resurrect. The Christ life within does not pause for permission. It moves when it hears proclamation. Will you permit that voice to sound today? Will you articulate your truth openly? Then declare it, because what you pronounce receives breath, and what you refuse to voice withers. The name you affirm becomes the life you inhabit immediately, not eventually. With each sentence, you assemble the architecture of your world. What you decree becomes the scaffolding your spirit lives within. Who you are is not sculpted by conditions around you. It is formed through the language you consistently speak. The most sacred inquiry is not what has occurred to me, but what name do I claim now? Because identity is not merely remembered, it is uttered into existence. It is not inherited from human narratives, but conceived by the Spirit and animated through articulation. Scripture instructs, let the weak say, I am strong. This is no summons for the strong to boast. Rather, it invites those in want, in wounding, and in hollowness to proclaim a reality beyond what their eyes currently register. The reason is simple: truth is not reactive, it is generative. Truth is not contingent upon events, it authors them. Truth summons what is invisible as though it were already present. To voice truth is not to deceive yourself, it is to restore the divine imprint within. When you proclaim, I am strong, you are not denying frailty. You are displacing it, allowing it to pass away, and summoning the God-finished version of you that existed in intention before the foundations of the world. The former identity clutches titles forged in wounding. I'm not enough. I'm the outcast. I'm always behind. I'm anxious. I'm a failure. These are not realities. They are covenants of fear and shame to which the soul has agreed. Each repetition tightens the bond to the outdated self and seals the tomb's door. Yet the moment you assert, I am chosen, I am free, I am divinely led, I am wealth embodied, I am radiant love, the outdated self quakes. The prior agreement unravels, the counterfeit tag falls away, and the authentic self begins its ascent. Receive this with sacred intensity. Your tongue is the instrument of resurrection, and your language assembles the framework of your becoming. If transformation is your desire, do not delay for external endorsement. Declare your truth until your cells consent, until heaven bears witness, until the mirror nods in agreement. Each restoration, each wonder, each spiritual dawn I have observed has initiated not with striving, but with utterance. A woman affirmed, I am the head and not the tail, and her financial story turned entirely. A man spoke, I am forgiven, and severed the chains of addiction. A child pronounced, I am wanted, and encountered peace as a first language. These statements were not casual slogans, they were metamorphoses, heralds of the timeless self advancing as the imitation self retreated. Therefore, I ask, dear soul, what title have you worn in recent days? And more crucially, what title will you claim next? The reply is not far, it rests as near as the breath moving through you. For the word is near you even in your mouth. Therefore speak decree, because the identity you articulate is the identity you embody. What you keep unspoken cannot rise again. Wholeness does not arrive by hiding sorrow, but by pronouncing the death of the falsehood that pain is your name. The law of release is not sentimental, partial, or soothing. It refuses negotiation with the former self. It executes it. Resurrection always follows burial. Royalty requires a cross. Genuine transformation demands the deconstruction of the counterfeit identity. Deception must be extinguished, the facade must break apart, and the fearful narrative must be quieted not by human frailty, but by sacred authority. Which untruth has been steering your days? The notion that hardship is your fate, that love is for others, not you, that prosperity is reserved for someone else, that what happened before has canceled what is ahead. These are more than passing notions, they function as binding spiritual contracts. Every repetition nails the true self to a cross and enthrones restriction. Yet listen carefully within divine order. What has been crucified can be restored. You possess authority to sentence the lie to death and to call truth to life. You are able to cancel the former pact and step into a fresh covenant anchored in God-given identity. Yet the opening movement is relinquishment. Release is not evasion, nor is it pretending. Release is a consecrated pronouncement. It is a cross enacted by language. It is meeting the counterfeit self face to face and declaring, you are not me. You are fear's reflection, and I will no longer obey you. I release my attachment to pain. I release the identity of limitation. I release the repetition of my former narrative. I take off the diadem of shame I used to bear. I set it aside. Christ did not sidestep the cross, he yielded to it, recognizing that yielding opened the door to heavenly dominion. You are called to the same posture. With holy bravery, you must permit the outdated voice to end, not by tinkering with it, comforting it, or explaining it away, but by pronouncing its end with fervor. This self no longer governs me. This pattern no longer sustains me. This fear no longer defines me. I proclaim the end of each counterfeit narrative. I dismantle the fabricated identity and ascend into the completeness of who I truly am. Such is the spiritual law of letting go, not by hiding or fantasizing, but by laying the former self on truth's altar and allowing it to be burned away. You are not defined by what happened by your hardest moment or by the mask constructed to survive. That version must exit, and it rarely does so without resistance. It departs when you issue the command, when you name and reject it, when your mouth says, enough. Should you persist in holding, rehearsing, or justifying the former story, you forfeit liberty, you inhabit a living sepulcher. Yet, if an inner uprising begins a sacred defiance, then let your lips author the conclusion of what has been. Announce it not merely in private thoughts or in ink, but audibly before the unseen order that heeds every syllable. Pronounce death upon deception and breathe life into truth. Speak without fear, interring whatever no longer advances your becoming. Newness requires an ending. Truth cannot be donned while the lie is still gripped. Your coronation cannot begin while the imitation self remains alive. Only when it is nailed down does the crown descend. Release it, beloved. Allow it to end now and observe what ascends to fill the space. I address every exhausted heart that has hauled the weight of a story God never authored. You have kept loyalty to a fear-formed identity, hammered in scarcity's forge, fluent in doubt's vocabulary. That imposter has influenced money, steered connections, and governed decisions. Its tenure is over. I speak without delicacy, yet under sacred commission, rising begins with interment. The entity being buried is the timid, fractured, fearful identity you have misnamed as yourself. You have heeded its commentary, trusted its verdicts, and echoed its falsehoods until the deeper mind adopted them as reality. I always fail. I'm terrible with money. Everyone leaves me. These are not casual musings. They constitute binding spiritual accords. By divine ordinance, you are summoned to dissolve them now. You are to affirm aloud, I no longer serve fear's voice. I no longer align with the defeated self. I refuse to drag the dead body of an outdated identity into a future destined for glory. The sacred text instructs, let the weak say, I am strong. It never requires the weak to account for their weakness. True liberty is not inaugurated by dissection or introspection. It is inaugurated by a pronounced letting go. Therefore, I summon the vocabulary of freedom. I expose the former labels failure addict, broken unlucky unworthy, and order their demise. You have no permission to remain in the sanctuary of my life. I nullify each curse I have spoken and undo every enchantment formed by speech devoid of divine love. Were the magnitude of your own voice fully known to you, you would refuse to speak recklessly about yourself ever again. The unseen realm is not moved by mere feeling. It is moved by authority. And authority appears through cadence, precision, and articulated truth. Therefore, you must rightly label the former self a fabricated identity engineered by the ego, molded by survival tactics, and strengthened by continual rehearsal. Repeating something cannot make it true, it merely makes it recognizable. And what is recognizable is not necessarily righteous or aligned. Therefore, consider which fear-written lines have you rehearsed that must be executed by holy decree. Name them, face them, and then pronounce you are powerless. I dissolve you in light. I bury you in truth, and I rise. I ascend as one carrying divine lineage commissioned by heaven to operate in rulership. This is far beyond motivational speech. It is the dialect of resurrection. The obsolete self is barred from the landscape where favor lives. Fear's vibration cannot pass into the realm of holy supply. Allow what is finished to remain with the finished and step onward. When your body tightens or your thoughts attempt to negotiate with former habits, Tell yourself plainly that version has ended. That mindset operated under fear, that loop survived through my agreement, and I withdraw that agreement now. I choose alignment with God, with divine order, expansion, restoration, plenty right, timing, perfect love, and my ordained position within it. I annul every pact with postponement, disgrace, lack, and the sense of not being worthy. I rescind those agreements through truth's authority. Now is your hour of emancipation, and it arrives through utterance, not quiet. Announce your freedom audibly, because the body heeds the sound of command. Echo this with me. I do not mourn the outdated self, I enter it. I do not debate with fear, I quiet it. I do not delay my ascent, I decree it. This is compulsory, for it is divine ordinance. Speak and obstacles fall. Speak and the renewed self emerges. Speak and the realm of the dead recognizes you are no longer its citizen. Every morning functions as a rising again, and each sunrise requires a laying to rest. You cannot step into fresh strength until you pronounce the end of yesterday's illusion. The maturation of the soul is never random. It unfolds through deliberate decree. Therefore, your earliest practice is not caffeine headlines or the feed of distraction. It is the funeral of the counterfeit self, the fragment that stumbled, yesterday trembled in fear, hesitated before open doors, and hid within shame's false safety. That version is unfit to ascend at your side. It requires a formal declaration of death. I bury yesterday's defeat. I release yesterday's doubt. I banish the voice that said I was not ready. This practice is not sentimental soothing, it is targeted operation. Change at the spiritual level is enacted by words. The tongue's reach exceeds simple mending. It becomes the scalpel that extracts the fraudulent self. As soon as your eyes awaken, let your lips awaken also. Declare your name before the world attempts to assign you one. Issue orders to your day before situations author their own narrative. Secure your identity before fear has time to spark worry. At daybreak say, today I rise. Today the old dies. Today the lie is buried and I ascend as truth. Allow this cadence to become your everyday pulse, your inner metronome. Your speech is a Jericho trumpet. When you sound, your decree fortifications fall. Do not delay until someone else validates your ascent. Do not postpone action until all fear evaporates. Step while courage is being formed. Do not require a sensation of strength before adopting the posture of authority. What entombs you is not defeat, it is muteness. And what raises you is not circumstance, it is proclamation. Announce truth in advance of evidence. State it ahead of emotion. Decree it prior to the surge of certainty. This is sacred statute. The deeper mind is unmoved by concepts, it is trained by recurrence. Cadence is the dialect of the body, and your speech must become a steady resurrection cadence, voiced not sporadically, but every day with constancy and audibly. This goes beyond inspiration. It is an expression of divine ordinance. What you rehearse, you resurrect. What you pronounce blessing over you animate. What you refuse to address you are fated to relive. So I declare once more with emphasis, today I rise. Today the old dies. Today I walk as a new creation, and nothing from yesterday can come with me. Announce it. Live it in your body. Ascend. You are called to shape your words not by wounds, memory, or lack, but from the seat of sovereignty. Let your language arise out of dominion. When I urge you to speak as the risen, I am not promoting performance or imitation. I am inviting you to occupy the true voice of your God-given self and articulate your reality so it conforms to your authentic nature. Elevation is not accomplished by wishing, it is accomplished by utterance. Let there be light was never a timid appeal. It was the authoritative decree of creation. The barrier remains unshifted so long as your tongue rehearses vocabulary that belongs to death. Though your body breathes, if your phrases are saturated with dread deprivation and confessions such as "I can't" or "I don't know how," your voice still echoes from tomb walls. You are neither hopelessly stuck nor fated to wait. You are out of sync with the cadence by which resurrection moves. The rhythm sounds like this: I am the new self, and I walk as the risen. I do not beg, I bless. I do not chase, I attract. I do not fear, I declare. To voice words from the throne is to refuse speech born of volatility, panic, or fretfulness, and instead to speak from the unseen seat of authority that has already been entrusted to you. Let your declarations flow from sufficiency. The resurrected identity is entire. It neither strains to qualify, nor scrambles for validation, nor fights for bare survival. Its purpose is to govern, to name the invisible as if already seen, to treat the impossible as sure, and to announce the new as here. Do not speak like a seeker. Speak like one officially sent. Understand this: your destiny is not paused until greater effort, extended recovery, or more desperate pleading. It is poised for your vocabulary to synchronize with eternal truth. The name you now accept is the master key. Your God-given identity is your armament, and your utterance is the seed that creates harvest. Until you call yourself what God calls you, you will meander through a desert of partially realized promise. Replace "I'm trying" with "I am doing." Exchange "I'm healing" for "I am whole." Trade "I hope" for "I decree." Graves unlock for the voice that carries authority, and nothing, no circumstance, opinion, or mirage can seal what believing speech has unbarred. Refuse to inhabit the role of the injured. Move as the embodied word, animated and active. I have watched the impossible bow to a solitary decree. I have seen stagnant resources awaken when a person affirmed, "I am abundance in motion." I have watched bodies restore when someone voiced, "I am the healed of the Lord." Your language is not merely aspirational. It is an instrument of war, a blade of the spirit. When it issues from the risen identity, it slices through illusion versus reality, lack versus supply, mortality versus rule. Therefore, speak as the new creation, like one who has already walked out of the tomb for good. In voicing your truth, resist the urge to collect outside approval. Look within and rely on the steadfast witness in you, the certainty that understands your words, legislate the reality you live under. Announce with settled trust, "I walk as one who is risen. I speak with authority, and nothing can resist my word." Allow this to become your governing dialect, the revival of your vocabulary. Learn to distinguish clearly between affliction's tone and ascension's tone. One converses in scarcity, the other speaks with regal assurance. Affliction's speech springs from fear at its root. It murmurs, "What if this fails? What if they abandon me? What if I cannot succeed?" It sounds like prison's mourning, the tired exhale of the outdated self, overloaded with loads it need not carry. Its cadence chains you, suggesting suffering is permanent, sanctifying hardship and calling delay a virtue. It traps the soul in theatrics and mislabels them as fate. Hear me assent is impossible so long as your language harmonizes with affliction. Your tongue pilots your trajectory, the way a rudder directs a ship. Mastery will remain out of reach, while you converse in defeat's dialect. Remember, the Israelites were delayed outside promise until the murmuring generation was gone. Even God withheld inheritance from mouths that grumbled. Therefore, your words must mirror your resurrected identity, or you will stride in circles petitioning in faith while undoing it with contrary speech. Train your mouth to release blessing alone. Speak from your inner high seat as one already seated in authority. You must learn to distinguish these two currents. Affliction announces life is difficult, it's unjust, it's too late. By contrast, ascension pronounces everything I need is being added to me now. Affliction complains, nothing ever goes right for me. Ascension counters with faith, all things work together for my good. Affliction blares and loops a familiar anxiety anthem worn thin by overuse. Ascension remains steady, poised, and quietly compelling. One dwindles your capacity while the other expands it. One condemns the ground, the other sows future harvest. Refuse to let affliction author your storyline by borrowing your tongue. Treat your mouth as consecrated space. Do not lay the sacrifice of grumbling upon that altar. Allow no spoiled talk to cross your lips. Refuse utterances founded in fear. Choose statements grounded in holy certainty. Understand this resurrection begins not beneath the earth, but within your declarations. Therefore, examine yourself what frequency saturates your voice. Are you speaking as a risen one or as a captive to affliction? Do you shrink beneath discreet self-pity, or do you reshape realities with gentle sovereign truth? Keep in mind, speech always carries power. It is never indifferent. What you say either widens your experience of heaven or extends your season in the desert. With every sentence, you choose the environment you will live within. Therefore, speak deliberately. Treat your mouth like a holy gateway you swing wide. Pour out grace instead of poison. Use words to roll stones away, not to cement them in place. For the tongue holds the energies of life and death, and you will eat whatever fruit your speech grows sweet or bitter. The decision is yours. Let the one who feels weak declare, I am strong. Let the one in lack say, I am rich. Let the anxious one pronounce, I am courageous. Not because the setting already says so, but because their confession aligns with divine reality. When your language mirrors your risen identity, circumstances are compelled to elevate in response. Your lips were not crafted merely to report what is visible, they exist to generate what will be. So stop rehearsing your sorrows. Testify to rising again. Testify to dominion. Testify to the inheritance that is yours by divine decree. Speak as if the obstacle has already rolled away, because in truth, it has been displaced. There is a recognizable tone when the inner chains begin to clink the resonance of affliction itself. I have detected it in men who voice surrender before sunrise, conceding defeat at the day's door. I have heard it in the unintended declarations of mothers who, without knowing, pronounce frailty over their children. It reverberates in sanctuaries, kitchens, and offices alike, in quivering statements from people unaware they are forecasting their own imprisonment. They say, I can't make it. Things never change. Money always escapes me. Love isn't what it used to be. The world grows darker. Nothing ever works out for me. Such phrases compose affliction's hymn book, the lamentations of captivity. These statements do not flow from the heavens, they are bred in yesterday's experiences. They do not echo the indwelling divine voice, but the injured versions of you that resisted burial and therefore missed resurrection. Affliction and ascension, Each carry a signature sound. So I inquire of you, which language has your tongue learned to practice? Do your sentences still rise from a tomb of scarcity, grief, ailment, and doubt? Or do they sound like the stride of one who has pushed away the stone and walked into miracle light? The mouth invariably discloses what is real. It is possible to announce belief in abundance while your vocabulary continually centers on deficiency. You might claim confidence in divine timing, yet bristle at each postponement. You could pray for restoration even as your sentences drip with grievance. That is not rising. It is replaying a continual dramatization of a life you say you've left, yet keep alive by your own speech. Understand utterance is the instrument of resurrection. With a word, Jesus called Lazarus forth from death. By that same authority, you call your authentic self into expression. The wrappings of limitation fall away, not mainly through striving, but through authoritative decree. Loose him and let him go, said Jesus. The tone of rising again never pleads, it issues commands. It refuses to linger among tombs. Instead, it announces the pledge of God. It does not rehearse yesterday, it heralds heaven's domain. Use language as one already awakened from death, as one imperishable, whose wealth is secured not by mortals, but by divine governance. Pronounce blessing ahead of any visible wonder, for blessing itself is the breath that nourishes and keeps the miracle alive. For anyone wondering, how do I discern whether my speech comes from affliction or from assent? Consider this speech born of affliction tightens the inner life, dims the lamp within, cages thought, and reduces delight to brief moments. Speech born of ascension, however, elevates you while you speak. Your soul stands taller, the heart opens wide, posture straightens, and your tone grows steady, luminous, and sure. You sense divine authority returning because you are not a petitioner, you are an inheritor. You do not wait for deliverance, you pronounce liberty. I will not admit defeatist language into my jurisdiction. I will not strike bargains with lack, and I will not host affliction's accent. I subject my tongue to discipline so it bears only benediction. I train my mouth to utter what God has pledged. I set apart my vocabulary with heaven's perfume. I speak favor before crops are visible. I declare outcomes before prizes show. I summon fulfillment before evidence appears. Such cadence defines a resurrected existence. Continue blessing until your bones consent to it. Declare truth until the very environment shifts. Keep speaking life until every internal sepulcher cracks and floods with light. Let this steady practice be holy to you. Attend closely to your sound, its timbre and cadence. Evaluate not only what you say, but the spirit that carries your speech. Refine the rhythm. If affliction threads itself into your sentences, cut it off at once. If defeat intrudes upon your decrees, dismiss it. If fear starts shaping syllables, exchange it for faith on the spot. The spoken word functions like a two-edged blade. You wield it either to sever chains or to carve injuries into your own future. This day I speak aloud, and I urge you to join me. My tone is resurrected. My mouth is sacred. My voice carries dominion. And let it be established. You must be unwavering in rewriting your vocabulary. Yesterday becomes your identity only if your tongue drags it into today. Cease maintaining the past by what you say. Stop breathing life into what no longer has a place in your realm. Every time you confess, I've always been anxious, you seat anxiety on the throne. Each time you say, I've never been good with money, you nail wealth to limitations cross. You are not designed to endlessly echo bondage's dialect. Your origin is liberty. You exist to proclaim freedom. Change must penetrate the invisible order before matter rearranges. Thus I counsel you, take your place in the inner courtroom and render verdict against every counterfeit identity you ever embraced. Announce audibly, I am no longer small. I am no longer the wounded one. I am no longer the forgotten, the broken branch, the nearly successful. Each such decree becomes a spade that inters the imposter self. If it is not buried, it will keep resurfacing to undermine your favor. As I have long explained, your deeper mind captures language like an old phonograph. Every sentence cuts a groove across the soul's wax. Unless you shatter that disc, it will spin the same lament of misfortune on repeat. Therefore, lift the hammer of speech and smash it. Proclaim, I am no longer the one who lacks. I am no longer the one who fears. I am no longer the one who waits. Do not keep such truths as thoughts alone. Voice them aloud. The spoken word is divine activity, and what you legislate into spiritual law returns in abundance, pressed down, shaken together, and running over. As I have set forth in the game of life and how to play it, these affirmations must be voiced out loud with vigor and certainty. Mountains respond not to quiet wishing, but to the command of spoken authority. When Israel passed through the Red Sea, they abandoned Pharaoh's shackles. They did not drag Egypt's narratives into Canaan. Nevertheless, many try to enter a promised tomorrow while their mouths still recite the tongue of bondage. You announce, I'm trying to change. Cease trying, begin decreeing. You confess, I'm healing. Replace it with, I am whole now. You murmur, I'm not sure I can. Exchange it for, I am supported by the infinite. Through the Christ within, I can do all things. This is the way to break the counterfeit recording by truth. Not by sentimentality diaries or exhaustive autopsy of yesterday, but by setting it ablaze with the fire of your words. Your mouth is the altar, your decrees, the sacrifice, and your faith, the flame that consumes. Say it openly, I no longer live under my old name. Continue declaring it until its resonance forms your present identity, until counterfeit tags shed themselves and the environment around you changes. Persist until even the heavens mirror your courage. I once affirmed, let the weak say, I am strong. I did not advise the weak to analyze frailty or to request approval. I said, say. Speech itself is the entry, the sword, and the instrument by which transformation occurs. And now, beloved, lift your consecrated pen and inscribe, I no longer fear my power. I am no longer devoted to struggle. I am no longer in conflict with myself. After writing, proclaim them audibly until the atmosphere vibrates, until the former self, listening from its tomb, shudders and recedes, so that only truth remains. Here, resurrection begins a tongue that enters falsehood and a true self forged in fire. Speak immediately. The former identity is before the court, and only the word renders verdict. Pronounce it guilty and allow the authentic self to ascend. You cannot exercise sacred authority while wearing the attire of the earlier self. Your speech chisels reality, and the descriptions you state about yourself etch a template upon your days. The principle is unequivocal. What you name, you embody. If you assert, I'm always late, events reorganize to confirm it. If you say, I'm not consistent, inconsistency manifests in practice. Words are not neutral. They function as energies, plans, and calls to being. The deeper mind does not argue, it complies. If you persist in naming yourself by your frailties, your experience will keep wearing postponement, bewilderment, and discontent. The titles you adopt become either a sanctuary or a sepulcher for your life. You must choose between them. The former self entices with comfortable expressions that seem benign, yet restrain like soft shackles. It whispers, "I'm just a procrastinator," and consent quietly ushers delay into your future. Know this, no label is harmless. Each statement that trails your I am either honors the divine or magnifies restriction. Language is never neutral. No utterance is empty. Phrases like "I'm shy, I'm unlucky," or "I'm broke" exceed description. They become spiritual acts of self-undoing. Without noticing, you erect altars to untruth and kneel at them. However, the moment you awaken and renounce such identities to reclaim your God-given name, conditions begin to change. The spiritual person lives by declaration's law, "I speak, and it is done." He refuses to say "I'm trying," and he does not say "I'm hoping." He affirms, "I am the resurrection and the life of every dormant promise within my soul." When the former self mutters, "You always fail," the spiritual one answers, "I am order. I am precision. I am fulfillment's voice." When deception asserts, "You never finish anything," truth rises to answer, "I move with divine discipline and exact action. I am guided. I am obedient. I am crowned." The sacred text never teaches, "Let the weak say I'm trying to be stronger." It issues the imperative, "Let the weak say, I am strong." This is more than motivation, it is a spiritual statute. Identity is shaped by proclamation. The living word of God nails the counterfeit self to the cross. Therefore, speak what the Spirit says of you, even when appearances dispute it. When circumstances argue, keep the inner voice anchored in divine reality. You are not ultimately determined by routine history or injury. You are determined by the titles you grant yourself now. Therefore, I ask, which former names require burial? Which counterfeit selves must be interred so that the Christ life in you may ascend? Observe your speech when tired, irritated, or wounded. Do you confess, "That's just who I am"? Or do you answer, "That is who I was, and I now pronounce a new name over me"? Recall that Israel could not take the promise while calling themselves grasshoppers. In the same way, you cannot receive wealth, affection, governance, or holy assignment while labeling yourself as lesser. Use a brave, accurate, and forceful voice. Transformation is not distant. You are identifying what already is, and the created order answers. The principle is straightforward. What I name, I claim. What I bless, I reinforce. What I decree, I embody. Abandon the vocabulary of postponement, dread, and loss. Declare instead, "I am the image and likeness of divine perfection. I am heaven's spoken success revealed. I speak, and it is done." Dear one, understand the veiled principle that death comes before rising. A new self does not simply appear. You must consign the former self to burial first. There is no resurrection without a death you consciously admit. Many are confined in sorrow, not due to events, but because they are tethered to the portrait of who they were. They speak to it, feed it with focus, and repeatedly broadcast its wounds, collapses, and constricting narratives. Yet today, I instruct you, treat the former self like a trespasser within the house of your authenticity. Confront it by sacred authority. You are no longer needed. I release you. I no longer serve your memory, your shame, or your fear. You are only a costume for my growth, and I decline the part. This is no figure of speech, it is an operation of the Spirit. The old self must end, and you must write its eulogy with truthful words from your own lips. The previous identity persists solely in the mausoleum of repetition. It keeps breathing because you return to it, decorating it with longing and sorrow. Understand graves stay vacant unless you reanimate them. The body of your old persona holds no power unless your speech revives it. So enter that interior tomb and issue the last pronouncement: I am no longer who I once was. I no longer respond to the voices of fear, scarcity, or self-loathing. The prior self now lies interred in holy quiet. I move forward clothed in a new identity. The Christ within addresses you by destiny, not by history. He cries, Lazarus, come forth, yet rising waits until death has held the wrappings. You must allow what no longer benefits you to break down and pass not with bitterness, but with sacred surrender. As I have long taught you, must ready yourself for the good you seek, and readiness demands room. New wine refuses old vessels. You cannot inhabit resurrection while hauling fragments of who you were. Your blessings stand ready for a worthy name, and that name must be renewed. When the frail pronounce I am strong, they are not pretending. They are performing divine substitution, the dialect of rising. Do not endlessly narrate events. Address them. Face them like diminishing specters and say, your work is finished. You have no authority here. Spoken thus heaven honors your courage, and your very cells begin to conform to the truth proclaimed. Many crave restoration, yet avoid the requisite death of the previous identity. They want resurrection without consenting to interment. Hear me, renewal requires relinquishment. Metamorphosis presumes a grave. If you genuinely intend to ascend, declare the burial finished now, not later. Do it not as a single emotional moment, but with steady voiced decree. Address your wound. You are no longer needed. Address your shame. You are no longer my identity. Address fear. You may leave in peace. I no longer live under you. This is not warfare between spirits. It is purification of the inner life. The former self cannot withstand speech uttered in holy authority. So speak without apology. Let what is dead remain with the dead. Your task is to rise and walk as a new creation in Christ. You are not dictated by recollections, missteps, or opinions of those who never saw you clearly. You are the embodied outcome of the word you choose now. Let that word be steady, luminous, and bright. The tomb stands ready. What your life awaits is not another wonder, but a completed interment. Decree the burial into existence, proclaim it with courage, and witness heaven's reply. As I frequently teach, what you behold, you become. The mirror tells no untruth. It returns exactly what you direct it to. Yet many look at their reflection and reassert limits. I am exhausted, I lack, I am getting old. These sayings reinforce an image of decline instead of rebirth. Such statements strengthen the husk rather than the kernel, the affliction rather than the favor. Yet hear my proclamation: the mirror remains powerless until you hand it a prophecy. When you speak truth to your reflection, you perceive more than features. You behold the living resurrection, authored by your own speech. Know this: the mirror is not a courtroom. It is an altar, and altars require offerings of declaration. The counterfeit self, conceived in fear, embarrassment, lack, and recollection, must end, and end repeatedly. It must pass away whenever the mirror invites you to rehearse yesterday's narrative. It must end when you face yourself and decline to echo defeat, opting to voice glory instead. I have looked upon dimmed faces and said, that is not you, that is a lie borrowing your features. Then I have urged them to declare over their reflection, I see the risen one. not later, not post-healing, but now. Rising arrives not by chronology, but by truth. Renewal does not trickle in through small upgrades. You are renewed by decree. What you address to your reflection is carved into your inner being. The promise states, "Behold, I make all things new." To behold is to look past illusion, to look anew, to pierce surfaces and declare rising. Therefore, I ask, as I have asked many times, whom do you perceive? Do you still breathe words into the skeptic? Do you still reflect the fearful one? Or have you at last severed ties with that counterfeit picture? Have you spoken the last eulogy over the previous self? Or does that corpse still influence your decisions? Look again, the mirror is ready, and spiritual law attends. Announce with consecrated courage, I see the risen one. I see the heir. I see the new creation. I see the living word. Then be still and accept. No preliminary perfection is required. You need only witness and faith, and the Spirit brings the change to completion. You are not calling forth a better ego, nor polishing the caterpillar. What appears is the enduring image of glory, strength, plenty, and peace, your authentic essence. But only your speech can unveil it. Therefore, be steadfast this day. Raise the mirror not as habit, but as emblem of rule. If needed, lift a coin, study a youthful photograph, or even behold your own tears and proclaim, I see the risen one. Do not whisper or merely hope. State it with force, assurance, and certainty. I see the risen one. Continue repeating until the inner life vibrates in agreement, until the body yields, until the image in front of you shifts, and your heart receives it as reality. This is the core of spiritual rising, not deferred to after death, recovery, or achievement, but available in the present. Every day you delay the decree, the illusion grows. But when you pronounce life to your reflection, you rise above the sepulcher of history. Beloved, the law stands ready. The mirror stands ready. Speak, behold, and ascend. Many assume that the arrival of pain, struggle, or resistance proves they have veered off course. I assert the reverse. Pain often marks the cracking of illusion. Resistance is the noise of shackles about to snap. Each strain born of opposition is evidence that you are nearing a holy breakthrough. Adversaries grow loud only when you stand at the doorway. Flames intensify because the nearness of the divine stirs them. If your body trembles and your thoughts revolt, if the former self panics, recognize that truth is displacing the counterfeit identity and seizing its throne. Such a moment is not the cue to withdraw or grow quiet. It is the time to amplify your decree, to pronounce with intensified certainty, this is my hour. I do not retreat. I reign. For ages, the soul misread these indicators, treating discomfort as proof of error, though in reality, discomfort is frequently life awakening inside what had lain inert. Remember, even Lazarus's ascent from death met resistance. Lazarus came forth wrapped in burial cloths. Christ did not sigh, he is still entangled. He issued a command, loose him and let him go. I echo that directive, release yourself. Refuse to interpret resistance as refusal or inner wrestling as defeat. Take them as announcements that the birthing chamber of your renewal is widening. Lift your voice with heightened authority and announce, although nothing seems altered, although obligations remain, although fear still whispers, I consecrate this ground. Something new is coming through me. I refuse to misread my pain, and I refuse to retreat from rising. Falsehood lives on quiet capitulation and consent to illusion. Therefore, align with truth and keep speaking. Should pressures grow, let your proclamation grow louder. If the heat approaches, let worship burn more intensely. As resistance swells, increase your decree. The holy principle of reversal turns outward strain into inward might the moment a word of authority is released. No weapon formed against me shall prosper, not because adversities never arise, but because I deny them my power. I withhold agreement. I refuse to consecrate them with my words, and I give no reverence to their appearance. What I bless steps beyond the enemy's reach. What I denounce as lifeless cannot be maintained by illusion, and no resistance can stop the soul that remains conscious of its holy origin. I refuse debates with fear. I do not negotiate with doubt or strike deals with what seems to be. I issue the word and keep moving, even if that road passes through flame. I comprehend, like Daniel, that lions fall quiet where divine mandate reigns. I know, like the widow, that obedience to a divine instruction turns lack into overflowing supply. I know, like Mary, that when the world sees only absence, a spoken word is sufficient to call life into form. Therefore, when resistance swells like thunder, I refuse terror, I pronounce. I speak not from injury's posture, but from dominion established by truth. I do not stall, stiffen, or step back. I fix my gaze on what is unseen and affirm with certainty, you signal my nearness to breakthrough. You confirm I must press on. You are the final sentinel before the burial vault of my old identity, and I move the stone now. Roar if you must. Your noise cannot rival the potency of the word. I carry a word that accomplishes what it sends itself to do. Each utterance of lack was effectively a contract consenting to smallness. Every time you hosted fear, you placed your signature alongside captivity. Statements like, I can't, I never, and I don't functioned as hidden vows, fastening you to a reduced self. Yet hear this, no one is finally fettered except by the bondage their mouth creates. Spirit does not ratify fear's light pencil marks. It recognizes only truth written in bold authority. Old doctrines of limitation, familiar scripts of failure, and recycled confessions are spiritual agreements drafted under illusion. By the mandate of your own authoritative speech, those agreements are hereby canceled. I reiterate with emphasis, pronounce death over deception before you pronounce life over reality. Without renouncing the counterfeit self, you feed it, and what you feed gains authority over you. Perhaps you once accepted the identities of victim failure, forgotten one, or chronic underachiever. Those were lines drafted by fear, rehearsed through routine, and staged inside illusion's theater, not pages from God's book. The true divine self will not rise as long as the imposter keeps performing. Tear up the script, strike the set, consign the obsolete contract to flame, and announce that is not my name. That is not my covenant. That is not my inheritance. Spiritual law is poised to obey your directive. It does not argue, evaluate, or hesitate, it enacts. Therefore, if you proclaim I am tired, the law seals it, so be it. If you say I never win, the law does not soothe it, certifies. But the moment you declare, I now destroy every false pact with lack delay and defeat the very groundwork of your former bondage, fractures beneath your feet. Whatever you treat as ordinary in your vocabulary graduates into statute within the unseen. Whatever your language tolerates becomes authorized to appear. Thus, employ holy power in your speech now. Treat each stale belief as a binding document and revoke it by decree. Dissolve it by the resonance of your voice. Renounce it by the standing you carry. You live under spiritual legislation, not merely civic codes. In that higher courtroom, one thing bears decisive weight: your spoken word. Not emotions, not history, not hurt your word is the writing instrument of destiny, the autograph heaven recognizes. If you want foresight into tomorrow, examine your sentences, not your moods. If you yearn for fresh provision, affection, or strength, you must renounce the bequest of your former identity, using the flaming authority carried by your tongue. Declare, I refuse to sign for struggle. I withdraw consent from delay. I will not answer to fear. Repeat these until your physiology harmonizes, the unseen realm salutes, and the residue of old contracts disintegrates to ash. The person who previously gave consent to fear must now ignite speech with holy flame. The one who once embraced suffering as normal must now issue rulership from the tongue. Truth cannot occupy a house still rented to deception. Assent cannot occur while the soul is shackled by shame. Therefore, tear up the counterfeit pact and say it aloud: I live under no curse. I renew no bondage. I affirm only the decree of freedom. By your decree, the former self expires, and from that very ash, the authentic self ascends. Speak without delay, incinerate the outdated agreement, and voice only what the heavens will co-sign. You do not require more time, more funds, or more allies. You require the burial of the identity you once served. The deception you rehearsed, the dread you obeyed, and the persona you protected, these have postponed your unveiling by mercy's design. Had the blessing arrived while you clutched a corpse self, it would have dissolved into confusion, shame, sabotage, or squandering. Your speech was never intended to pet the ego. It was forged to burn it clean. Maturity brings a threshold where you must command the funeral of the former identity. It rarely goes quietly. Expect bargaining theatrics and panic. Still, I insist, refuse to comfort what heaven has commanded you to crucify. The cross precedes the coronation always. So receive this 7-day mandate, 7 days of consecrated decrees by which falsehood dies and life emerges. Day 1, announce aloud: I revoke every word, vow, and identity that kept me limited, trapped, or fearful. I am no longer in covenant with who I was. Let the force of that sentence move through you. Cut the cords to yesterday. Do not argue with its reverberations. Continue declaring. Day 2, proclaim: I no longer serve my struggle. I no longer act for validation. I am not my wound. I am the word. With this decree, the soul's emergence begins. Voice it even through a shaking throat. Day 3, state with certainty: I am unavailable to be who I was. I gladly lay the ego in the ground. My resurrection is already underway. This is your holy pivot. Expect resistance to defend the old persona. Answer with greater volume. Move your body, weep if you must, but keep going. Persist until the atmosphere around you responds. Day 4 arrives. Now publish your ascent. The former has passed. The new stands present. Decree: I rise today in perfect harmony with divine law. Say it when you open your eyes. Say it while you walk, while you transact, while you offer. Let this sentence saturate you until it hums in your stillness. Day 5. Move through the world as one already lifted. Attract provision by identity rather than by strain. Release every leftover thread from former cycles. As you hold this posture, your field reorders. New relationships, concepts, and paths appear not by force, but by congruence. Day 6. Cease striving to be other than you are. Accept that renewal is active now. Let this certainty echo internally. You are not fixing yesterday, You are agreeing with what is true today. Transformation is not a plea, it is a consent. Day 7. You stand as resurrection personified. The old identity has ceased, and the new identity is undeniable. You proceed in unqualified authority. These statements are not empty iterations, they are rising in motion. When voiced sevenfold with total yielding, the decree demolishes all barricades of postponement. Speak with unwavering certainty, as though you have already stepped into the higher place. The primary wall between you and fulfillment is a timid mouth, unwilling to pronounce the end. 7 days, 7 decrees, 1 burial, 1 rebirth. Refuse to rehearse the old self's anxieties or to negotiate with the tomb. Proclaim release, ascend. The cross always comes before the crown. This is heaven's pattern. And that cross is inward, not merely outward. It concerns less the opinions of others and the pains of life, and more the protest of the counterfeit ego when its illusions lose support. The cross represents pride being burned away, masks dissolving, and the ache that accompanies letting go of every idol and mirage that molded us. Yet it is surrender rather than striving that invites the crown. I have taught this, and I reaffirm it. People suffer because of attachment clinging to obsolete patterns, fabricated selves, and ancestral fears. Truth will not reign in a split heart. You cannot preserve the old label and simultaneously inhabit a new life. Kingship settles only on a head bowed to spiritual order. The world preaches escape from the cross. Preserve your persona, inflate your ego, shield yourself from pain. But I insist discomfort becomes holy when it participates in God's reshaping. The daily cross is this training, the tongue contradicting deceiving appearances and declining to judge apparent lack as final. Whenever you bless the very thing that hurts you and declare truth in the face of denial, you shoulder the cross and fashion the crown. In that act, the anxious ego-led persona loosens its grip, while the I am Christ awareness awakens an identity untouched by scarcity, defeat, or dread. Christ carried his cross publicly and endured mockery. Expect the same if you choose the real over the performative, yielding over wrestling proclamation, over doubt. You may be misread. Still, dear heart coronation follows cruciform surrender. Do not refuse the cross or explain it away. The old self will protest. This is death, and I answer yes, and it is resurrection. When you speak authoritative words over your burden and affirm, this situation cannot overcome me. It can only uncover my truth. You transmute hardship into honor. You ascend with the challenge, no longer flattened by it, but borne upward beyond it. I have seen men and women who looked shattered, dismissed, and overlooked by society, and yet they bore their crosses nobly. They pronounced blessing over desolate ground, offered gratitude amid lack, and voiced abundance, though their hands held nothing more than a handful of coins. In due time, their crowns manifested often, not as public symbols or material trophies, yet authentic rule emerged all the same. They gained mastery over feeling stewarded their circumstances and authored their outcomes by truth-filled speech. Such is the holy paradox of the cross. What looks like diminishment becomes the curriculum of dominion. What resembles death turns out to be the threshold of sacred kingship. Adopt the mind that was in Christ Jesus, who being divine, embraced the cross to unveil the power of resurrection. The cross functions as your refining passage, your furnace of change and cleansing. It signals the ending of the counterfeit self and the unveiling of the authentic I am. Announce this reality each day, carry it bravely, and receive your crown without fanfare, recognizing it was not achieved by striving, but bestowed by spiritual law. When the decree left your lips and the ego yielded, the throne appeared. This is how the kingdom discloses itself. I die to fear and rise in faith. Say it with thunderous conviction and resurrection's gladness. I die to fear. I rise in faith. Fear has no rightful claim on me. It is only earth's garment, a grave echo, a silhouette that disappears the instant I voice light. I ascend by my pronouncement. I am lifted by decree. I refuse the heaviness of deception. I choose language that raises and releases me. As these words go forth, former wrappings loosen, the slab of limitation is pushed aside, and I step out, restored, no longer the former version, but my real self, brought forth by utterance, washed in truth, and refined by holy remembrance. I refuse to travel alongside hollow narratives of doubt or feast with the specters of guilt. I die to fear and rise in faith. My declarations bury enslavement. With every syllable, I cast another spadeful of sacred power onto the tomb of former confines. Each affirmation hits the fetters and shatters them. Each truth I voice wraps deception until it suffocates. I reject the notion that bondage is substantial, its life depended on my quiet. Now I speak until links rattle and illusions liquefy in the fire of my certainty. I proclaim the internment of constraint, the obsequies of fear, and the silencing of each counterfeit label ever assigned to me. My speech is not conceptual musing, it is decree final and binding issued in heaven's authority. My utterance commits slavery to the grave. My mouth functions as mausoleum, and horn inside it lies expire, and truth ascends. It is at once a place of burial and a portal of passage. What I articulate, I ratify. What I announce, I awaken. With one exhale, I bury shame. With the next, I enthrone dignity. I have tasted the force of my voice. Once it narrated me into shadow. Now it declares me into radiance. My speech no longer mirrors circumstance, it remakes it. Through this tongue, I summon justice, increase wholeness, gladness, love, and precise divine alignment. This mouth is never idle or neutral. It is consecrated and mighty perilous to all that is false or inert. Indeed, my mouth serves as both sepulchre and clarion. I announce the rites for failure's end. I will not grieve what never belonged to me, nor will I memorialize deception with my attention. I carry no wreaths to anything God did not author. I consign to ash each betrayal, collapse, and almost victory that haunted my heart. I let them go, not with lamentation, but with a song. I have learned that failure is no enemy at all, merely a costume outgrown. Therefore, I officiate its funeral, not in sadness, but in holy finality. Memory cannot resurrect it, and echoes cannot summon it back. The grave is shut, the stone moved aside, and the inscription set, "Here lies failure, unclaimed, unnamed, undone." I declare failure interred and rise as the legitimate heir to sacred success. Antique names have no access to me, neither the fear-spoken tags nor the titles I once received in capitulation. I live outside the grasp of insult, confinement, or ancestral shame. Accusations return to sender unopened, and derision loses all audience. I have ascended past the borders of former labels. Call if you wish, I do not answer. I reside in the stronghold of I am and live within holy remembrance. I grant no fidelity to illusions. My devotion belongs solely to truth, my worship to God. I am not the product of others' naming, I am the name I decree. Old titles cannot track me now, for I stride under sacred commission. My path is not accidental. It is paved by divine intention, lit by inward wisdom, and watched over by heaven's sentinels. I do not drift in isolation, nor circle the same terrain without end. I advance with consciousness and mandate. I do not petition, I pronounce. I do not supplicate, I issue decree. The power entrusted to me is never for domination of people. It is for stewardship of perception and command over inner narrative. Each stride is directed by God, each utterance is received, and each righteous desire is escorted toward fulfillment. I am not a wanderer. I am a traveler commissioned with holy authority. The shrouds are stripped away. I decline to drag yesterday's narrative into the rising that belongs to this day. I peel off constricting bandages and throw away the ties of borrowed doctrines. The odor of death is absent from me. I do not bear the look of a cadaver. I step out remade, integrated, cleansed, strengthened, and clothed with purpose. My rising needs no defense, and I am not indebted to history for neat endings. The funeral linens are finished. Let every charge grow quiet, and let each obsolete persona be burned to ash. I am called forth unbound and liberated. I advance as a sign and wonder not as a casualty. The wrappings are off. I utter the word and lift at once, effortless and sacred. Without forcing or begging, I let truth leave my lips, and I am elevated. Lesser ordinances collapse. Former frameworks fall away. From a royal seat I speak, and heaven moves with urgency to perform it. I speak and climb past explanation, past recollection, past hesitation, above every whisper of hex or harm. I speak and rise, powered not by muscle, but by yieldedness. I speak and rise not as payment, but as rightful bequest. I speak and ascend not on the basis of personal worthiness, but by alignment with eternal reality. Delay is dismissed. Permission slips are unnecessary, and waiting seasons conclude. My inner life answers my command. Sinews awaken, the sepulchre quakes, and the skies part. I declare and I ascend. Hear me, lift your voice, lengthen your posture. Let your spirit rise. Do not retreat now. This moment belongs to rising. Echo these words not timidly or as mere concept, but as one who has stood at the crypt of the former self and walked beyond it. I am not engaging the you who lingers in postponement, nor the self who narrates lack and delay on a loop. I call forward the identity that knows reality and declares without fear, I am risen. I am free. I am restored to divine order. Let us act in heaven's tempo, because language released in holy rhythm shatters the chains hidden in the deep mind. That rhythm splits the bars of inertia. It converts sorrow into forward motion. Speak now. Allow the syllables to pass through mouth flesh and days. Every line carves like a chisel. Every recurrence turns into a master key that opens what was sealed. I release the version ruled by fright and rouse the one instructed by wisdom. I liberate the hesitant fragment and enthrone the voice that declares with certainty. I relinquish clinging and move as one in divine current. I strip off the hiding persona and inhabit the luminous presence. I dismiss the fear-governed self and awaken the steward who commands. I put down the begging tone and rise as a herald of decree. I unbind the identity that seeks permission and take my stance as the self who carries authority. I dismiss the identity that demands evidence and appear as evidence embodied. I retire the apologizing self and inaugurate the self that authorizes. I unchain the clutching persona and become the one who enlarges. I drop indecision and ascend in steadfast might. I set aside the tired self and stand as the timeless one. I silence the skeptic within and call forth the herald who announces, this is the moment of rebirth, of restoration, of illumination. Let your blood recall its truth. Let your bones arise. Let your mouth swing wide the gate of your resurrection. The outdated identity is interred beneath sediments of criticism, suspicion, wavering, and delay. Still, the true self stands ready, lion-like at the threshold, not begging to be worthy, but listening for your summons. Understand this is not an arrangement of pretty phrases. It is power able to crush constraints, a cadence that rips fabrications apart. Previous failures are irrelevant. You were never designed to stay and try. Your design is to rise again. In one accord, we decree I liberate the resisting fragment and rise as the celebrant. I set down the retreating persona and step into the one who reigns. I cast off the mimic and awaken the originator. I dismiss the grumbler and take my place as the one who commands tempests. I let go of the part obsessed with loss and awaken the steward who births plenty. I mute fear's mouth and ascend in the identity that tells only truth. I unbind the diminishing self and embody the presence that cultivates life. I relinquish the identity haunted by lack and awaken the one that flourishes within holy current. I release the persona that collapses under force and embody the builder who erects. I evict suspicion about God's timing and root myself in certainty that now is appointed. I exit the self that withers from fear and rise as the one refreshed daily by sacred reality. I forsake the version terrified of conclusions and become the mover of stones. And now let this be sealed not by frail belief, but by sovereign flame, by a voice that sounds from summit and meadow and furnace the same. Declare it thrice until atmosphere shifts. This is my time. I lay down the falsehood. I rise in truth. This is my time. I lay down the falsehood. I rise in truth. This is my time. I lay down the falsehood. I rise in truth. Let no one claim deafness. Let fear admit it met resistance. Let every vision acknowledge its summons. The decree has gone forth. Resurrection is underway as it begins forever from the lips of the awake, the courageous, the steadfast, and the free. Rise now. The earlier edition of you is unfit to bear the robe of glory. I met a man crushed by shame's load. Over and over he pronounced defeat on himself. I am weak. I always fail. I am not enough. As seed determines harvest, his field returned ruined relationships, withered resources evaporated, and the world mirrored his inner verdict that power did not belong to him. I said to him, "You are not the caption society placed on you. You are not the scarred tag from yesterday. Choose a new name, draft a new decree, bury the former label in its grave." I handed him a consecrated instrument utterances charged with holy might. I directed him to confess each day I am the embodiment of strength. God's law is woven into my very bones. My tongue speaks life and power. My past holds no authority to speak. For a full 7 days, he refused the old vocabulary. When lies attempted to rise, he overruled them with truth. As kernels break open under heaven's energy, his genuine strength returned not flimsy or transient, but sacred, constant, and immovable. He moved with calm assurance. His voice settled into depth. His frame stood straight. Shame no longer bent him. He interred it with his decrees and constructed strength upon its grave. Friends remarked, "You've changed." But this was not mere improvement. It was rising again. He did not become someone else. He revealed who he truly was beneath the masks. Listen, if shame has caged you, use as practice. Face it and declare you are not who I am. You are a false name, and I bury you with full power. Declare it audibly, now I am free from shame. I carry strength. I do not repeat weakness. I embody resilience. I am not my past. I am the living word made real. Then watch what stirs awake inside your depths. A woman once sought counsel, unshackled outwardly, yet confined by phrases stitched through her own psyche. The designation that governed her life was not the legal name on paper. It was the identity she had uttered in seasons of hurt, secrecy, and isolation. She had accepted labels like broke and too much. Beneath a restrained smile, she whispered, "It's too late for me." No jailer held a key, yet captivity colored every region of her existence. The inner name to which she answered had never been authored by God. She wore lack as a title and bowed to shame as if to a crown. The sacred command says, "Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain." Each instance of denying her divine inheritance profaned that command without her realizing it. To bear God's image is to be named with power. Nevertheless, she permitted the world to stamp her with scarcity's dialect. I said to her, "Daughter, untruths endure only by the oxygen of your speech, and you have been breathing for them far too long." I instructed her to refuse the summons of broke. If the word was spoken, she would treat it as inaudible. When numbers ran thin, she was to proclaim, "My name is not lack. My name is abundance, the name bestowed by my Father." She was likewise to retire the phrase "too late." In its place, she was to affirm daily, "I live in divine timing. Nothing in my life is delayed." To mute the accusation of too much, she was to assert, "I am the flawless reflection of divine abundance." Nothing about God's image is excessive. The responsive spirit was swift once the falsehood fractured. In mere weeks, her countenance changed. Her prayers acquired stability. Petitions matured into proclamations. Habitual apologies gave way to authoritative statements. The deepest miracle was not accumulation, it was cessation of self-rejection. Prosperity, wholeness, and wonder were never pending compensation. They awaited recognition of her true God-given name. She later said, "Nothing was added. I simply released what had never been mine to carry. I discarded every cursed label and received my divine identity." Therefore, I ask you, what counterfeit names weigh on you? Which titles did fear, family narratives, or failures assign? Strip them off, quiet them, and decree, "God has named me. I answer solely to increase and truth." I repudiate the names of scarcity, hesitation, turmoil, and loss. I respond to favor, abundance, and strength alone. The imposter identity must die for the authentic self to appear. One cannot confess lack and simultaneously inhabit a life of plenty. The title you adopt authors the pattern you live. Therefore, put on the name of abundance, answer to joy, and allow every unholy pronouncement to drop inert, without root, without resonance. A curse is disarmed the second you stop rehearsing it. Shame evaporates when your mouth refuses to answer its call. Your ascent begins the instant you decline to inhabit a life not written for you. Years back, a man came with confusion about vocational inertia, projects froze, and prospects leaked away like sand through open hands. He had skill, strategy, and credible leads, yet outcomes dissolved before fruition. "I don't understand," he said. "I show up, I plan, I make offers, and still nothing finalizes." I answered, "Your conflict isn't commercial, it's confessional. Your speech about yourself is misaligned." He had not yet inhabited the identity that produces closure. His tongue still borrowed the former self, hesitant, doubtful, passively hopeful, instead of authoritative. He looked engaged, but his language contradicted his aims. I asked, "What scripts run in you right before a meeting?" He paused and confessed the litany of loss. What if they pass on me? What if I'm rejected again? What if timing fails? I replied, "Those are not entrepreneurial thoughts. They are erosive thoughts. They are shadows disguised as sentences, not the speech of authority." I issued him a replacement identity and decree I no longer delay. I now deliver. He was to say it daily, lacing shoes, steering between appointments, and quietly during salutations. This was no technique for manipulation, but a practice of resurrection. You cannot execute agreements while wearing hesitation, nor welcome provision while conversing in postponement. First, you must declare the renewed identity, and then reality reflects it. Stand in your rightful station as one already risen. Soon lapsed clients resurfaced, stalled invoices cleared. A long silent account contacted him with, "We're ready to move forward." Why the reversal? Because internal change led the way. He began speaking from the new identity, and the environment synchronized. The outer world is not late. It keeps time with the cadence of your inner declarations. Alter your self-perception, and supply arranges itself to match. The reality is simple. The old self cannot receive gifts assigned to the renewed self. Speak from your upgraded identity, because the abundance designed for you will not deliver to your former address. He now pronounces over calendar correspondence and contemplation I no longer postpone. I act now. My presence finalizes what lingers. My words complete what fear began. I end confusion and inaugurate clarity. I refuse hesitation. I move, let go, enlarge, and deliver. Therefore, hear this: retire identities such as trying, waiting, and almost. Reality yields little to wavering, and heaven does not anoint ambiguity. Use the voice of one who already is what purpose calls forth. Let identity and assignment converge. Decree yourself risen or linger among those who never enter the promise. Say it now with settled force: I no longer delay. I now deliver. Expect the outcome to take shape in accordance with your decree. I remember a woman standing in front of me, shaking not with terror, but with the resonance of a choice capable of recharting her bloodline. She proclaimed, "It ends with me." I answered, "Then what begins?" Those sentences were more than lyric. They bore weight, jurisdiction, and spiritual rank. Her decree did not spring from vanity or passing feeling. It issued from a consecrated center. She had suffered long and silently, as countless women have, muting desire, absorbing ancestral fear, and looping survival scripts so embedded in her speech that even her laughter sounded apologetic. Her mother treated poverty as if it were a holy oath. Her grandmother regarded silence as safety's shield. Yet here she stood, battle-worn but equipped with revelation. She had realized that the tongue is an estate passed down through families, and that words travel across generations, not as legend, but as lived reality. She had seen shame in one woman ripen into lack in another, a mother's dread transmitted as a child's inner weather, and silence in one era devoured by the next. She did not request soothing. She hungered for transfiguration and spark. She arrived resolved to burn the bridge tying her to inherited cycles, and asked, "How can I become the resurrection within my family line?" I replied, "Begin with a funeral. Pronounce death over the lie that insists this is in our blood. Bury the fable that declares we've always been this way. Affirm that destiny is not coded in DNA, destiny is carved by the words you speak. She walked her house space by space where remembrances had settled like dust, and she declared out loud, I let go of the language of struggle. I release my attachment to limitation. I renounce the inherited fears of men of money of miracles. I release the burdens that were never mine to bear. I proclaim that it ends with me. I refuse to partake in the bread of sorrow. I decree that my children will never again hear me speak words of lack. The very air changed no theatrics, no thunderclap, only calm dominion. Within the hush, something gave way because silence had served as oppression's dialect. A steady voice of truth fractured that silence and snapped its grip. Dear heart, receive this plainly. Yesterday cannot extend itself unless you supply it with speech. If your mouth repeats the frightful phrases of your parents, you tether yourself to their outcomes. If you narrate the pain again and again, you do not pay homage, you perpetuate captivity. Let the dead keep their stories. You must converse as resurrection incarnate as living newness. Curses do not evaporate under scrutiny or contemplation. They end beneath the edge of decree. Speech carries the force to snap shackles and sever the bequest of disgrace. Spoken with courage, words inaugurate another family line, stamped by bravery, favor, and holy supply. Refuse the defeatist script, I come from nothing. Announce instead, I come from God, and through me all things are renewed. Replace. We have always struggled with my home abides under God's grace, not under ancestral grief. And banish, I don't know how. Declare the Lord himself instructs me and my children rest in great peace. If you grasped the voltage, your words discharge fear would never again be your editor. Stop reciting what was, decree what must now unfold. Say daily, I am the first harvest of freedom in my family. I speak as one redeemed and chosen. Through me, God plants a new garden, and this time we will not be exiled. This time we are home. A woman grounded in identity makes curses bow. A solitary, truthful voice shatters chains. If that voice is yours, declare with me, it ends with me. And I put the question once more. What begins? You have to cease seeking aliveness within what has passed away. Do not request new breath from the cemetery of former days. He is not here. He is risen. As Christ departed the sepulchre and abandoned the linens, so must you. Rising presupposes interment. If you would ascend, you must let go of all traces of bondage, retired labels, anxieties, condemnations, and counterfeit names that once constricted your life. Understand without ambiguity, the former self must perish, and its ending must be spoken publicly with jurisdiction. The grave is vacant precisely because the lie concluded. The storyline of lack, self-sabotage, and inner reduction has reached its end. Still, you must refuse to haul fragments of grief into your renewed life. One cannot ascend while still wearing death's attire. Many inquire, where is my breakthrough? Where is the response to my prayer? Yet they sit inside doubt's vault, clinging to the identity that suffocated their provision, calm, and creativity. You cannot step into the kingdom while clutching what is lifeless. The stone must be shifted by you through the commanding force of your voice. Declare this immediately. I speak death to my former self. I release every rendition of me that settled, begged, shrank, or trembled. That self is finished, lifeless, powerless, and without standing in the realm ruled by the resurrected word. Recall the angelic question at the tomb. Why do you seek the living among the dead? Heaven refuses to converse in fear's dialect. The spirit does not reply to a persona fabricated from defeat. God never named you unworthy or inadequate. Such designations descended from misunderstanding, terror, inherited scripts, and misbelief. Therefore, the counterfeit garments must be folded, set away, and offered to truth's flame. When Christ arose, recognition came by presence rather than by outward form, and the same shall be with you. Once you discard the costume of striving, some will wonder, is that truly you? Your reply will be, it is the I am alive within me. The former things have departed. Do not attempt to find solace inside your crypt. Do not request renovations for the chamber of spiritual standstill. Do not cry for rising while your hands grasp the persona that must be laid to rest. If you truly want new life, you must articulate it into being. Lazarus come forth was never a soft petition. It was a royal order, a dominion-filled decree calling the soul out of restraint. That very caliber of command must proceed from your mouth now. Address your own life as Christ addressed Lazarus. Speak to resources, to worth, to calling. Summon them to vitality, but begin by moving the stone. Use your voice to terminate every prior agreement with limitation. Without this rising is impeded aid from heaven goes unclaimed, and your vault stays cluttered with alibis and the tatters of an obsolete self that still fastens your tomorrow. Therefore, I ask what still lies within needing a final pronouncement of death. Which robe of defeat still drapes your shoulders? What iteration of the earlier you still clings like burial linens upon a body aching to stand? Let it go. Lay it aside. Speak the severing word and cross the threshold into your resurrection. The sepulchre is vacant, yet one question endures. Will you live or keep knotted to what is dead? Real authority is not the maintenance of an outdated persona, nor the tailoring of burial cloth, nor the compromise with fear. It is relinquishing everything with a concluding decree. I am no longer the one who dies. I am the risen self. I am the living word in motion. No illumination resides in the tomb. Light lives in spoken truth. Enter it, speak through it, and ascend.